The old Winchester Model 1873 gleamed in the firelight, metal surfaces catching orange flickers as Warren Hackett's weathered hands worked the cleaning rod through the barrel. 75 years on this earth, and his fingers still remembered the ritual. Pull the rod, twist, push. The familiar motions that once meant survival. Marcus watched from the doorway, dress greens still crisp from the supply depot. 22-years-old deployment orders folded in his brace pocket. Afghanistan in 36 hours. The boy had questions. Warren could see them building behind those young eyes. You still keep that one, Grandpa? Warren didn't look up, just kept working the rod steel, scraping against steel with that particular whisper only a well-maintained rifle makes. This Winchester and that old Sharps over the mantel, they put down 3 men in December of 1881. Killed them to protect this family. His hands paused. You think I'd throw away something that kept your grandfather alive? The question hung in the warm air between them. Outside Wyoming, wind howled against the windows like it had for 144 winters. Some things never changed. Marcus shifted his weight boots creaking on old floorboards. What scared you most, Grandpa? In all your years? Now Warren looked up. Set the rifle down with deliberate care, the kind of care a man learns when metal and wood mean the difference between living and dying. Not the war, not death itself. He stood, walked to the mantel, picked up a photograph in a simple frame. Black and white edges, worn soft from decades of handling. A younger Warren face haunted even then, surrounded by 6 small figures. December 14th, 1881. The day I found 6 children freezing to death in a blizzard. Silence filled the room. Warren handed the photograph to his grandson. The day I was most afraid wasn't the day I might die. It was the day I realized I had a reason to live. Because losing that reason, Marcus, that's worse than any death I've faced in the war. Marcus studied the faded image, 7 faces staring back across time. The story you never tell. The one I'm telling tonight. Warren settled back into his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. Before you leave, you need to understand something. You need to know why in this family we fight for each other. Why we always come home. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Warren's gaze went distant, seeing not the present room, but a blizzard 44 years gone. That day, I'd been dead inside for 4 years. Walking, breathing, but dead where it matters. Then I heard a child scream. He leaned forward, firelight casting shadows across his lined face. Let me take you back to 1881. The cold was a living thing. It moved through Warren Hackett's sheepskin coat like water through cheesecloth, found every gap between fabric and skin, turned his breath to ice crystals that clung to his beard. 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind from the north at 20 miles per hour. The kind of cold that killed if you gave it time. His mare Bess picked her way through knee-deep snow hooves, punching through the crust with each step. 12 years old Morgan breed, 14.2 hands of solid muscle and stubborn determination. Warren's gloved hand rested on her neck, feeling the warmth beneath winter coat. They'd been riding fence line for 3 hours, checking wire that didn't need checking, tightening posts that held firm. Anything to fill the hours between dawn and dark. Anything to keep moving through another day exactly like the 1,460 days before it. 4 years since the fever came. 4 years since he'd buried Eleanor at the top of the hill, her headstone carved by his own hands because he couldn't afford a proper marker and couldn't bear the thought of an unmarked grave. 4 years since he'd lowered Benjamin into the ground beside her, 5 years old, and still clutching the wooden horse Warren had carved him. 4 years since Charlotte had followed her brother into the frozen earth, 3 years old with her mother's eyes. 3 graves on the hillside behind the ranch. 3 reasons Warren Hackett woke each morning wishing he hadn't. The Sharps rifle hung from his saddle, .45-70 caliber loaded and ready. Not for game. Wyoming winter saw to that. The rifle rode there because it always had, because a man alone in the territory kept his weapons close, because muscle memory from the war ran deeper than conscious thought. 3:15 in the afternoon, and already the light was failing. Another hour, maybe less, before full dark. Warren should turn back, should head for the ranch house and the cold dinner waiting there. Should do a lot of things. Best stop. Not the gradual halt of a tired horse, but a sudden freeze, every muscle tensing. Her ears pinned flat against her skull. Nostrils flared, pulling in scent. Warren's hand moved to the rifle without thought. In the war, hesitation meant death. 13 years later, the lesson still held. Bess swung her head east toward the abandoned garret barn, where it squatted on the ridge like a wounded animal. Three walls standing, one collapsed under last week's blizzard, leaving a gap that bled darkness into the white landscape. Then he heard it. High, raw, desperate. A child's scream. Warren's spurs hit Bess's flanks before his brain caught up to his body. The mare lunged forward, hooves throwing up snow in white explosions. 400 yards of deep powder between fence line and barn. 90 seconds at full gallop. The Sharps was in his hands now. Breech open, checking the load by feel. One round chambered, 6 more in the saddlebag. Winchester back at the ranch. Should have brought it. Should have brought a lot of things. Bess hit the drift by the barn at full speed, momentum carrying them through. Warren was moving before she stopped, boots hitting frozen ground, rifle up and ready. The gap in the wall gaped like a missing tooth. Pale light filtered through, barely enough to see by. Warren burst through, finger on trigger, every sense screaming. 6 children. They huddled in the corner like abandoned pups, wrapped in rags and scraps of cloth that couldn't possibly keep them warm. Blue lips, pale skin, the kind of cold that goes bone deep and doesn't let go. The oldest stood in front of the others, a girl maybe 7, maybe 8, thin as a willow switch and shaking so hard her whole body vibrated. In her hands, gripped with both fists, a rusted kitchen knife pointed straight at Warren's chest. "Stay back," her voice cracked. "I'll cut you. I swear I will." Warren froze, not because of the knife. He'd faced Confederate bayonets at Antietam. A rusted blade in a child's hands didn't frighten him. He froze because of her face. Brown eyes flecked with gold, pointed chin, dark hair falling across her forehead despite the matted dirt and dried tears. Charlotte. His daughter Charlotte staring back at him from a stranger's body. 4 years he'd carried her to that grave on the hill. 4 years he'd watched them lower her into frozen ground, wrapped in her mother's best quilt, because he couldn't afford a proper coffin. 4 years he'd known with absolute certainty that she was gone. But here she stood, alive, terrified, holding a knife like it could stop the world from hurting her again. Behind her, 5 more faces peered from shadows. A boy of 9 or so, tall and gaunt, one arm wrapped protectively around a smaller child. 2 little girls clinging to each other, one blonde and one brunette, eyes wide with fear. Another boy, maybe 6, coughing so hard his entire body convulsed. And the smallest, barely more than a toddler, silent and still, with enormous brown eyes that held too much knowledge. The girl with the knife thrust it forward. "I said stay back, mister." The movement shattered the spell. Warren's training kicked in. He lowered the sharp slowly, raised one hand, palm out. Universal language. "I mean no harm, no words yet." Words were cheap. Any monster could speak kindness while planning cruelty. He needed to show them. "That's what the last man said." Ice in her young voice. "Right before he killed my mama." Warren's jaw tightened. He could see it in her eyes. The truth. She'd watched someone die. Watched someone she loved die. The kind of thing that marked a child forever. "I'm not that man." His first words. Keeping them low, calm. The voice he'd used gentling horses. Steady. Unthreatening. "Prove it." How did you prove something like that? How did you show a child who had seen the worst of humanity that good people still existed? Warren did the only thing he could think of. He set the Sharps in the snow, knelt down, started unbuttoning his coat. "What are you doing?" The girl's eyes widened. "You're freezing, all of you." His sheepskin coat, 6 pounds of leather and wool lining, worth $12, nearly 2 weeks' wages. The only thing keeping him alive in Wyoming winter. He shrugged it off, held it out toward her. "Take it." She didn't move. "Your lips are blue, child. Take the coat." "Lily," the tall boy spoke up from behind her. "Maybe we should." "Shut up, Henry." She didn't look away from Warren. "How do we know this isn't a trick?" "You don't." Warren kept his voice level, kept the coat extended. "But your choice right now is trust me or freeze to death. Nobody else is coming up this mountain. Storm's getting worse. Another hour, maybe 2, you won't feel your hands and feet. Hour after that, you won't feel anything at all." The smallest child in the back, the toddler, started to cry. Not a loud, healthy wail, a thin, reedy sound like a wounded animal trying not to attract predators. Something cracked in the girl's face. Not much, just a hairline fracture in the armor she'd built around herself. She turned slightly just enough to look at the crying child. Jamie hushed now. But Jamie couldn't hush. Too cold, too hungry, too far past the point where comfort meant anything. Warren saw the weight pressing down on her. This wasn't just a frightened child. This was someone forced to become mother protector leader when she should have been playing with dolls and picking wildflowers in summer meadows. Let me help. He kept the coat steady. Please. The tall boy Henry stepped forward, put himself between the girl and the others. How do we know you won't take us back to him? Back to who, Mr. Blackwood? A smaller girl spoke up, 8 years old with blonde hair and blue eyes, watching Warren like she was memorizing his face for later identification. He owns us, got papers and everything. Warren's blood went cold, colder than the 15-degree temperature outside, colder than the Wyoming wind. Nobody owns children. Tell that to the judge who signed the contracts. Henry's voice carried bitterness no 9-year-old should possess. Tell that to the sheriff who looks the other way. The girl with the knife, Lily, lowered it just an inch, watching Warren's face. We're running from Blackwood's camp, 3 days north in the mountains. You walked 3 days in this weather, in those clothes. We didn't have much choice. She lifted her chin, defiant. It was run, or a glance at the little ones, or worse. Warren didn't need her to finish. He'd heard whispers over the years, the kind men shared in low voices at the saloon. Operations in the mountains that trafficked in more than gold. He'd told himself those were just stories, exaggerations, the kind of ugliness that happens somewhere else to someone else's children. Looking at 6 faces, he knew better. My ranch is 2 hours south. Got food, fire, medicine for that cough. He looked at the mite who was still hacking into his sleeve. You let me take you there, I promise you'll be safe. You promise, Lily said the word like it meant nothing, like she'd heard it before from other mouths and learned exactly what promises were worth. I do. And if we say no, then I'll leave my coat ride back to town, send someone else up to help. But by the time they get here in this storm, he didn't finish, didn't need to. The children looked at each other, silent communication born of shared trauma and desperate necessity. Something passed between them without words. Henry stepped forward. If you're lying to us, the boy's voice shook, but his eyes didn't waver. If this is some kind of trap, you should know I killed a man once. One of Blackwood's men, when he came for Maggie. He pointed at the blonde girl, the 8-year-old who'd spoken earlier. I hit him with a rock, big as my fist. Hit him once, twice, kept hitting until he stopped moving. So I know what it's like to kill someone, and I'll do it again if I have to. Warren met the boy's eyes, saw the truth there, saw the horror of it. 9 years old and already carrying that weight. I believe you. Warren kept his voice quiet. And I hope you never have to do it again. Something shifted in Henry's rigid posture. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of possibility. It took nearly an hour to get them all out of the barn and onto horses. Warren put the 3 smallest on Bess with strict instructions to hold tight. Tommy propped against the mare's neck where body heat might help his fever. Grace in the middle, arms wrapped around Tommy. Jamie behind, clinging to Grace with that ragged blanket clutched in one small fist. Warren tied them together with spare reins. Not tight, just enough to keep them from falling if they passed out. Lily insisted on walking until Warren pointed out her feet were wrapped in bloody rags and she was slowing everyone down. She rode behind him on the spare gelding, thin arms locked around his waist, ready to let go and run at the first sign of trouble. Henry walked, refused to do otherwise. Somebody's got to keep watch. Warren didn't argue. The boy had the look of someone who'd learned survival meant staying alert. You didn't take that away with words. Maggie walked too, stayed close to Henry, one hand always touching his sleeve like she needed the contact to feel safe. They didn't talk much. Wind made conversation difficult. And what was there to say? These children had been through things Warren couldn't imagine, and he was still a stranger. Trust would come with time, if it came at all. The ranch appeared through the snow just as light started to fade. Warren heard Grace gasp, saw her pointing at the smoke rising from the chimney. Is that a real house? It is. Warren kept his voice steady. With a real fire, the realest. And food. Tommy's voice barely a whisper between coughs. You said there would be food. All you can eat. He dismounted first, reached up for the children. One by one they slid into his arms, Grace light as a feather and somehow still smiling. Tommy burning with fever, small body going limp. Jamie clutching that ragged blanket, looking at Warren with eyes that held no expression at all. Maggie trembling even through layers of rags. Henry, who despite exhaustion, stood straight, shoulders rigid. Lily came last. She hesitated, then let him lift her down. When her feet hit the ground, she winced. Warren saw fresh blood seeping through the rag wrappings. Inside. Now. The house hit them like a wave. Warm air, smell of wood smoke, the simple presence of walls and roof and safety. Grace started crying immediately, great gulping sobs of relief. Tommy collapsed into the nearest chair, still coughing. Maggie stood frozen in the doorway, tears streaming down her face, though she made no sound. Henry kept himself together through sheer force of will. Warren could see it in the rigid set of his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched tight enough it had to hurt. And Lily walked through the room slowly, touching things, the table, the stove, the curtains at the window, like she was making sure they were real. Whose house is this? Mine. You live here alone? I do now. She looked at the second door, the one leading to the back rooms. Warren hadn't opened those doors in 3 years. Couldn't face what lay behind them. What's in there? Bedrooms, 3 of them. They'll need airing out, but they're dry. Got blankets. Got beds. We can stay here, really. He looked at her, this fierce little warrior with his daughter's face and a survivor's eyes. Something shifted in his chest. Something that had been locked up tight for 4 years started to come loose. Long as you need. The night was chaos in the best possible way. Warren built the fire until it roared, added 3 oak logs, each 18 inches, enough to burn 4 hours. The temperature climbed from 45 to 65 in 20 minutes. He heated water in the big cast iron kettle, 2 gallons for washing. Found blankets that still smelled faintly of lavender from when Ellie used to store them with dried flowers. Dug through the cellar for food. Dried beef, 5 pounds of it from last fall's slaughter. Potatoes stored in sand. Bread he'd baked 2 days ago. Preserved apples in vinegar for preserve from last year's harvest. The children ate like they'd forgotten how. Grace put away more food than seemed possible for someone her size. Kept reaching for seconds, thirds. Henry tried to pace himself, but kept going back for more bread. Maggie ate silently, methodically, like she was storing fuel for a journey. Tommy picked at his plate between coughs, fever-bright eyes fixed on the fire. Only Lily held back. You not hungry, she shrugged, making sure there's enough for the little ones first. Warren's heart clenched. 7 years old, and already she'd learned to put herself last. There's plenty, eat. After dinner he tended their feet. One by one unwrapped the bloody rags, cleaned the wounds, picked out stones and ice crystals, bandaged them properly with boiled cotton cloth and salve Ellie had taught him to make from bear fat, beeswax, and comfrey. Lily watched every move, cataloging it, learning like she expected to have to do this herself someday. Tommy was worst. The boy's cough had a rattle Warren didn't like, his forehead hot enough to fry an egg. He needed a doctor, real medicine, things Warren didn't have. How long's he been sick? Started in the mines. Henry seemed to know the most about each child's history. Dust got in his lungs, they said. Been coughing ever since. The mines, Blackwood runs a gold operation. Kids work better in the small tunnels, he says. Less, pay less food, less trouble. Tommy was underground 12 hours a day before we ran. Warren closed his eyes. When he opened them, Henry was watching with a strange expression. You're angry. Damn right I'm angry. Warren's voice came out rough. At the men who did this, at a world that lets it happen. He shook his head. Not at you. Never at you. Something in Henry's rigid posture softened, just a fraction. Most folks don't care what happens to kids like us. We're just... He searched for the word. Property. That's what Blackwood calls us. You're not property. Law says different. Then the law's wrong. It was a simple statement, but the way the children's heads turned toward him, the way hope flickered in their eyes before they shut it down, told Warren everything he needed to know about what they'd been through. He put them to bed in shifts, two to a room doors open so heat could flow through. Grace and Maggie took Charlotte's old room, curled together on the small bed like puppies in a pile. Tommy and Jamie got Benjamin's room. Tommy propped on pillows to help him breathe. Jamie clutching that ragged blanket, staring at the ceiling. Henry insisted on sleeping in the main room near the door. In case anyone comes, nobody's coming. You don't know that. Warren didn't argue. The boy needed to feel useful, needed to believe he was protecting the others. That was his way of coping, which left Lily. She stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, the room Warren hadn't entered since Ellie died, stared at the dusty quilt, the empty fireplace, the photograph on the bedside table. Is that her? Your wife? Warren stepped up behind her, looked at the faded image of Ellie on their wedding day. Young, beautiful, live in a way that made his chest ache. That's her. She's pretty. She was. What happened to her? Fever. Same one that took our children. How many's two? Benjamin was 5. Charlotte was 3. Lily was quiet for a long moment. I look like her, don't I? Your daughter. Warren's throat closed up. Yeah, you do. Is that why you helped us? Because I look like her. The kind of question only a child could ask, cutting straight to the heart without any adult pretense. It's why I stopped, Warren admitted, but it's not why I brought you here. I brought you here because what's happening to you is wrong, and I can't ride past wrong and pretend I didn't see it. Lily turned to look at him, really look, and for the first time some of the wariness in her eyes eased. Mama used to say most folks are good if you give them half a chance. Smart woman, your mama. She was the bravest person I ever knew. Her voice wavered just for a second. Mr. Blackwood wanted to buy me. Said I'd bring a good price on account of... She stopped, jaw clenching. On account of I'm pretty. That's what he said. Pretty girls are worth more. Rage flooded Warren's veins, white hot and murderous. He forced himself to keep breathing, keep his face calm for the child's sake. Your mama said no. She said she'd die first. The tears came now, streaming down her dirty face. So he beat her, made me watch, said it was a lesson about what happens when people say no to him. And when she grabbed a knife, tried to fight back, her voice broke. He shot her, right there in front of everyone. Then he told his men to come get me. But you ran. Mama told me to. Last thing she ever said, run and don't look back. So I did, found the others along the way, kids who'd escaped or been left behind or were just trying to survive. We stuck together, watched out for each other. That's the only way any of us made it this far. Warren knelt down, brought himself to her eye level. Lily, listen to me. What happened to your mama wasn't your fault. And what that man did, what he was going to do, none of that was your fault either. You understand? She shook her head. If I wasn't pretty, if I was ugly or plain, Mama might still be alive. No, his voice was firm. Your mama died because a bad man made a bad choice. That's on him, not on you, not ever on you. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Then slowly she stepped forward, wrapped her thin arms around his neck. Warren froze. He hadn't been hugged in 4 years, hadn't held a child since Charlotte, hadn't felt that particular weight of small arms trusting him to keep them safe. Then he hugged her back, gently, carefully, like she might break. You're safe now, I promise. Don't make promises you can't keep. This one I can. She pulled back, looked at him with those 2 old eyes. He'll come for us. Mr. Blackwood, he doesn't let anyone go. Let him come. You don't understand. He has men, lots of them, guns, money, the law on his side. I survived a war. Warren's voice was quiet. Buried my whole family. Spent 4 years wanting to do and not having the courage. I'm not afraid of some mine owner with delusions of godhood, and I sure somehow won't let him take you or any of those other children. He touched her cheek, brushed away a tear. That's a promise too. Lily stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once, like she was accepting a contract. Okay, I'll trust you, for now. She turned toward the bed, looked back. But I'm sleeping with the knife. Despite everything, Warren felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Fair enough. That night, with guards posted and children finally asleep, Warren sat by the fire and watched flames dance. 6 children, 6 stories of horror and survival, 6 lives that had somehow found their way to his door. He thought about Ellie, about what she would say if she could see him now. She'd always wanted more children, had talked about filling the house with little ones, giving Benjamin and Charlotte a whole pack of siblings to run wild with. Life had other plans. Or maybe this was the plan all along. Maybe everything, the war, the ranch, the fever, 4 years of grief, had been leading to this exact moment. This abandoned barn, these 6 faces looking up at him from the shadows. Maybe he'd been broken so he could understand what broken looked like in others. Or maybe that was just the kind of nonsense a man told himself at midnight when he was trying to make sense of a senseless world. Either way, it didn't matter. What mattered was these children were here now, in his house, under his protection. And come hell or high water, he was going to keep them safe. He didn't know yet that Silas Blackwood was already on their trail. Didn't know the man had sent riders out the same day the children escaped, tracking them through the snow with dogs and guns and the kind of cold determination that made ordinary evil look tame. Didn't know that in 3 days those riders would reach his gate. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty, a truth that burned in his chest like an ember refusing to die. He'd kill every last one of them before he let them take these children. Every last one. The fire popped, sent up a shower of sparks. Outside, wind howled against the windows like something trying to get in. And Warren Hackett, who'd spent 4 years wishing he was dead, finally remembered what it felt like to have something worth living for. First light came gray and cold through frost-covered windows. Warren hadn't slept, hadn't even tried. He'd spent the night watching, listening, waiting for trouble that hadn't come yet, but surely would. Henry was still on the floor, curled up like a boy guarding the door. The boy's face looked younger in sleep, softer, more like the child he should have been instead of the soldier he'd been forced to become. Warren rose quietly, added wood to the fire, started making breakfast, eggs from the chickens he'd almost sold last month, bacon from the pig he'd slaughtered in fall, biscuits from flour he'd bought in town 3 weeks ago, when going to town still felt like a chore instead of a lifeline. The smell of food brought them out one by one. Grace first, padding on bandaged feet, dark curls wild from sleep. She stopped in the doorway, eyes huge. It wasn't a dream. No, sweetheart, it wasn't. We're really here in a real house with real food. Real as it gets. She burst into tears, not sad tears, Warren realized, but the overwhelming kind that came when something too good to believe turned out to be true. He knelt down and she ran into his arms, sobbing against his shoulder. It's okay. He patted her back awkwardly. You're safe now. Mama said I'd find somewhere safe. Before she went to sleep and didn't wake up, she said I'd find someone good. Warren's throat closed up. Your mama was right. Maggie appeared next, silent as always, watching from the shadows until Grace pulled away and reached for her. The 2 girls held hands. Maggie's eyes met Warren's for just a moment. She didn't speak, but something in her expression shifted. Acknowledgement. Maybe the beginning of trust. Then Tommy, still coughing, still burning with fever, but walking on his own 2 feet. The boy looked at the food on the stove and his eyes filled with wonder. Is that bacon? It is. I haven't had bacon since... He trailed off, trying to remember. I don't know since when. Then you're overdue. Sit down. Lily came out carrying Jamie on her hip, the toddler's face buried against her neck, small fist clutching that ragged blanket like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to the world. She looked at Warren, at the food, at the other children already settling around the table. You cook? Had to learn after my wife passed. Wasn't going to starve. Most men would have just gone to the saloon. Most men didn't have a ranch to run. She almost smiled. Almost. Then she sat Jamie in her lap and reached for a biscuit. They ate in silence at first. The desperate kind of eating that came from not knowing when the next meal would arrive. Warren had to remind them twice to slow down. That there was plenty. That nobody was going to take it away. It was Henry who finally spoke. What happens now? Warren set down his coffee cup. What do you mean? We can't stay here forever. Blackwood's men will come looking. They always do. Let them come. You keep saying that. Henry's voice was tight. But you don't know him. You don't know what he's capable of. Then tell me. The children exchanged looks. That silent communication again, born of shared trauma and desperate necessity. The story came out in pieces, like pulling shrapnel from a wound. Painful, necessary, each child adding their part. Lily spoke first. Silas Blackwood runs the biggest gold operation in Northern Territory. Legal on the surface, got papers for everything. Licenses, contracts, partnerships with important men in Denver and Cheyenne. But underneath, Warren prompted, underneath he runs children. Henry's jaw clenched. Buys them, steals them, takes them from mothers who can't pay debts. Puts them to work in the mines because we're small enough to fit in tunnels where grown men can't go. And when we can't work anymore, Tommy's voice was barely a whisper. When we get sick or hurt or too big for the tunnels, nobody finished. Nobody had to. Warren's hands gripped the table edge so hard the wood creaked. How many children still up there? 20, maybe more. Lily shifted Jamie to her other hip. New ones coming in all the time, old ones. She stopped. Disappearing. Henry's voice went flat. That's what they called it. When a kid got sick or tried to run or just stopped being useful, they disappear. And nobody does anything, Maggie spoke. Her voice so rare that when she did it carried weight. Blackwood owns the law up there, sheriff's on his payroll, judge too, and the territorial marshal owes him money. Warren looked at her with new respect. How do you know that? I listened. Her blue eyes were steady. When they thought I was too scared or too stupid to understand, but I understood everything. What else did you hear? That Blackwood has connections all the way to Washington. Politicians who look the other way because the gold keeps flowing and the money keeps coming. That he's untouchable because he knows things about important men. Things that would ruin them if they came out. Nobody's untouchable. That's what my mama said. Lily's voice went quiet, right before he touched her. The silence that followed was heavy with grief and rage. Warren stood, walked to the window, looked out at the snow-covered valley, his land, the place he'd built with his own hands, where he'd buried his family, where he'd spent 4 years trying to die without having the courage to actually do it. There's a town called Buffalo about 30 miles south. Got a real marshal there, man named Clayton. I served with his brother in the war. You think he'll help? Henry asked. I think he'll listen. And sometimes listening is the first step. What if it's not enough? Warren turned back to face them. 6 children, 6 pairs of eyes, all watching him with a mixture of hope and fear. Then we'll find another way. But I'm not sending you back to that monster. Not today. Not ever. You understand me? Lily held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, we'll trust you. We'll try your way first. It wasn't much, but it was something. A crack in the wall she'd built around herself. A window through which light might eventually shine. The frame shifted. Warren back in the present. 75 years old. Fire burning low. Marcus on the edge of his seat. So you just took them in, 6 kids you didn't know. Oh, there were questions. Warren's voice carried the weight of years. Starting with how to keep 6 children alive when men with guns were coming for them. Marcus leaned forward. They came for them. Warren's smile held no humor. Just old memory and older resolve. 3 days later, he picked up the Winchester again. Check the action one more time. Let me tell you about Silas Blackwood, the man who thought he owned children, the man who was about to learn what happens when you threaten a father's family. He set the rifle down, met Marcus's eyes. December 17th, 1881, 10 riders appeared at my gate, and the day I remembered what it felt like to want to live long enough to kill. Outside, Wyoming wind howled, same wind that had blown 44 years ago, same cold, same darkness. But inside by the fire, a story continued, a story of 6 children and the man who chose to fight for them, a story that would echo through generations, through grandchildren and great-grandchildren, through a family built not on blood, but on choice, the choice to stand together when it mattered most, the choice to come home, always. Morning passed in a blur of activity. Warren checked wounds, changed bandages, forced Tommy to drink honey water for the cough that rattled deeper in his chest with each passing hour. The boy needed a doctor, real medicine, things that lay 30 miles away in Buffalo through winter roads that could kill as surely as any bullet. But leaving meant exposure. 6 children on the trail in December. Easy targets for anyone tracking them. And someone was tracking them. Warren knew it in his bones. Men like Blackwood didn't let valuable property walk away. They came after it with guns and the kind of cold persistence that wore down resistance through sheer stubborn will. The question wasn't if they'd come. The question was when. Henry appeared at the window, face pale, hands clenched into fists. Someone's coming. Warren crossed the room in 3 strides, looked out at the valley below. 4 riders, maybe half a mile out, moving fast despite the deep snow. Horses throwing up white spray with each stride. Is it them? Grace's voice trembled. Don't know yet. Warren grabbed his rifle. The sharps. Checked the load by feel. 1 round chambered. Everyone back room, now. But, Lily started, now, and stay quiet no matter what you hear. They moved. Even Jamie, somehow sensing the danger, made no sound as Lily carried him through the doorway. Henry hesitated, looking back. I should stay. Help you. You should protect the others. That's your job right now. But what if... Warren's voice stayed firm but gentle. You've done enough fighting for 10 lifetimes. Let me handle this one. Something flickered in the boy's eyes. Relief maybe, or gratitude. He nodded once, disappeared into the back room. Warren stepped onto the porch. Rifle ready, finger along the trigger guard. Not on the trigger yet. Never put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to destroy what you're pointing at. The war had taught him that. The riders came up the trail in single file. Steam rising from their horses' flanks. Not moving like an attack force. Moving like men who expected to be met. The lead rider wore a deputy star on his coat. Warren's finger stayed off the trigger, but the rifle stayed up. Deputy pulled up short when he saw Warren. Took in the rifle. The hard expression. The way Warren stood blocking the door like a fortress wall. Warren Hackett. That's right. Deputy Owen Webb from Buffalo. The man dismounted slowly, hands visible. The kind of careful movements men used around armed strangers. Marshal Clayton sent us. Said you might have trouble coming your way. Warren studied him. Young, mid-20s, honest eyes, jaw that looked like it knew how to take a punch. Behind him, 3 townsmen, farmers by the look of them, pressed into service. How'd you know? Riders came through town yesterday, asking questions. Mean-looking bunch. Well-armed. Said they were looking for runaway laborers from a mining operation up north. Owen's eyes narrowed. Said these laborers were children. And what did the marshal say to that? Said there's no such thing as a runaway child. Just children running from something bad. Owen stepped forward, not threatening, just closing distance enough to talk without shouting. He sent us to see if you needed help. How many children? Owen asked. 6. Something shifted in the deputy's expression. Anger. Carefully controlled. Professional. Blackwood's operation. That's what they tell me. Owen turned, spat in the snow. Son of a... He caught himself, looked back at Warren. We've heard rumors about that camp for years. Never could prove anything, never could get close enough. They say he's got the law in his pocket up there. Maybe up there. Owen's voice went hard. Not in Buffalo, not with Marshal Clayton. Warren lowered the rifle. Not much, just enough to show willingness to listen. Sir, if you've got 6 children who can testify about what's happening in those mines, that's evidence. Real evidence. The kind that can bring a man down no matter how many politicians he owns. These children have been through hell. I won't put them through more trauma just to satisfy the law. I understand that. Owen's voice softened. But if Blackwood gets them back, he didn't finish. Didn't need to. Warren weighed options. Trust a stranger with a gun. Risk the children on the word of a man he'd never met. But the alternative was waiting here alone. 6 children in 1 rifle against however many guns Blackwood could hire. You'd better come inside. The introductions went carefully. Warren brought the deputies in one at a time. Let each child decide how much distance they wanted. Some hung back, some edged closer. All watched with wary eyes that had learned the hard way not to trust uniforms. Henry stayed close to Maggie, one hand always on her shoulder. Protective instincts on full alert. Lily kept Jamie in her arms, watching the newcomers with eyes that missed nothing. Tommy sat propped in a chair, too weak to stand, but his gaze stayed sharp. And Grace surprisingly walked right up to Owen Webb, looked at the badge on his coat. Is that real? It is. Does it mean you help people? It means I try to. Grace nodded firmly. Good, because we need a lot of help. She studied his face with the intensity only children possess. Mama said angels would look out for me before she went to heaven. Are you an angel? Something softened in Owen's expression. No sweetheart, just a man trying to do what's right. Grace turned to look at Warren, then back to Owen. That's what Mr. Warren said too. Maybe that's what angels look like when they're pretending to be people. They spent the next hours planning. Owen explained the situation. Marshal Clayton had already sent word to the territorial governor. If Blackwood tried to claim legal ownership, he'd have to do it through proper channels, which meant time, which meant opportunity. But that only works if we can keep the children safe until the legal process plays out. Owen's voice stayed level, professional. Blackwood won't wait for courts. He'll come himself or send enough men to take what he wants. How many men does he have? Last count, maybe 20 regular employees, plus however many guns he can hire when he needs them. Warren did the math. 4 deputies, himself, against 20 or more armed men. Not good odds. We need more people. Working on it. Marshall's putting together a posse, but it takes time. Folks are scared of Blackwood. His reach is long, his memory longer. What about the Army? There's a fort 2 days east. Already sent a rider, but the Army moves slow. They don't like getting involved in civilian matters unless there's proof of serious crime. Children being enslaved isn't serious enough. Owen's jaw tightened. It is to us, it is to any decent person. But to some colonel sitting behind a desk, it's a local matter until someone proves otherwise. Warren wanted to hit something, wanted to ride up to that camp himself and burn it to the ground. But that wouldn't help the 6 children depending on him. That would just get him killed and leave them alone again. So we wait, we prepare, and we pray Blackwood gives us enough time. Owen met his eyes. I wish I could promise you he will. Wishes don't stop bullets. No, sir, they don't. 3 days passed like held breath. Tommy fought the fever with everything he had, which wasn't much. Dr. Finch, the physician Owen brought from Buffalo, stayed at the ranch, checked the boy every few hours, adjusted medicines, kept his small body propped up so he could breathe. Warren took turns sitting with him through the long nights, wiping sweat from his forehead, talking to him even when he wasn't sure the boy could hear. You got to fight, son, you hear me? These other kids need you. Henry needs someone to help him keep watch. Grace needs someone to laugh at her jokes, and I reckon Maggie needs someone quiet like her to sit with. Tommy's eyes fluttered open on the 3rd morning, weak, confused, but alive. Mr. Warren, right here, Spain. Did we make it? Are we safe? Warren took the boy's thin hand in his own. We made it. You made it. And yeah, we're safe. A tear slid down Tommy's pale cheek. Mama always said I was too stubborn to do. Your mama was a smart woman. The door opened. Henry stood there. Looking older than 9 years, had any right to make someone look. He's awake. He is. Henry crossed the room, sat on the edge of the bed, took Tommy's other hand. You scared us. Sorry. Don't be sorry. Just don't do it again. Tommy managed a weak smile. I'll try. Warren stood, gave them space, but stopped at the door when Henry spoke. Mr. Warren, yea, thank you for staying with him, for, the boy's voice caught, for caring. That's what family does. The word hung in the air. Family. Warren hadn't meant to say it, but once out it felt right. Henry nodded once, turned back to Tommy, and Warren stepped into the hall. Day 3 arrived with clear skies and bitter cold. 10 degrees, no wind, the kind of still cold that froze breath in your lungs. Warren was in the barn checking horses when Henry came running. Snow flying up from his boots, face white. Riders. Warren didn't ask questions. Grabbed the sharps, ran. From the porch he counted them. 8, no 10 riders spreading across the valley floor, like a net closing around prey. At their head, a man in a black coat on a black horse, sitting ramrod straight, like a general surveying a battlefield. Owen was already there, his 3 men taking positions, behind the water trough, behind the woodpile, corner of the barn, not great cover, but better than nothing. That's him, Owen said quietly. Doesn't look like much. Neither does a rattlesnake until it bites you. The rider stopped 50 yards out, close enough to talk, far enough to have running room if things went sideways. The man in black sat motionless, studying the ranch, the men, the defensive positions. Then he smiled. Mr. Hackett, his voice carried across the cold air, smooth, pleasant, like discussing the weather. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Warren kept the rifle ready. I don't believe I do. 6 children, runaway laborers from my mining operation, contracted legally and properly through their surviving parents or guardians. He pulled a stack of papers from his coat. I have documentation, signed, witnessed, filed with the territorial office. I don't care if you have a letter from the president. Those children aren't going anywhere. Blackwood's smile never wavered. I'm afraid that's not your decision to make. The law is quite clear on matters of contract labor. These children are my legal responsibility until their terms of service are complete. Owen stepped forward. Mr. Blackwood, I'm Deputy Owen Webb from Buffalo. I'm going to have to ask you to take this matter up with the courts. Courts, Blackwood laughed, soft, almost gentle. Deputy, with all due respect, I have judges who owe me their careers. I have politicians who would rather die than see certain information made public. The courts are mine. Not in Buffalo. Everywhere. The pleasantness drained from Blackwood's voice like water from cracked stone. You're young. You don't understand how the world works yet, but you will. When this is over, you'll understand that power isn't about badges or laws. It's about who's willing to do what needs to be done. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Blackwood turned his attention back to Warren. Mr. Hackett, I'm told you're a reasonable man, a veteran, a rancher who keeps to himself and minds his own business. So I'm going to give you one chance to be reasonable. Warren waited. Give me the children, all 6 of them. In return, I'll pay you $500 for your trouble and forget this ever happened. You can go back to your cattle and your silence and your grief. Nobody else needs to get hurt. $500, more money than Warren had seen in years, enough to pay off debts, buy new stock, rebuild the ranch into something thriving. Blood money, every cent soaked in the suffering of children. Go to hell. Blackwood's smile flickered. I was hoping you'd say that. It makes what comes next so much simpler. He raised one hand. His men started forward. Everyone down, Warren shouted. The first shot came from Blackwood's side, wild and high, splintering the porch rail 3 feet from Warren's head. Warren returned fire. The sharps kicked against his shoulder. Familiar, comfortable, like shaking hands with an old friend who'd saved your life more times than you could count. One rider jerked, fell. The deputies opened up from their positions. The valley filled with noise, smoke, chaos. Warren moved without thinking. War instincts taking over. Fire. Chamber a new round. Fire. Find cover. Keep moving. Don't let them pin you down. A bullet whined past his ear. Another punched through the barn door behind him. He dropped to one knee, brought the sharps up, squeezed the trigger. Another man down. Owen took down a third. But there were too many. They were being overrun. Then from inside the house, a sound that turned Warren's blood to ice. A child screaming. Warren dropped the sharps, sprinted for the door, burst through, found chaos. One of Blackwood's men had come in through the back window, had Grace by the arm, dragging her toward the broken glass while she kicked and clawed and screamed. Henry was on the floor, blood streaming from a cut on his head. Lily stood in front of the other children with her rusty knife, trembling, outmatched, terrified. Warren's hand moved to the Winchester mounted above the door, grabbed it without thinking. Muscle memory from years of keeping it there. Ready, loaded, for exactly this moment. Closer quarters than the sharps. Faster action, better for what came next. He didn't hesitate. Raised the Winchester. Fired. The man went down. released Grace. She scrambled away on hands and knees, found Maggie, buried her face in the older girl's shoulder. Warren stepped over the body without looking, positioned himself between the children and the window, Winchester ready for the next threat. "Everyone okay?" "Henry's hurt," Lily's voice shook, "and Tommy won't wake up." Warren looked at the younger boy, lying still and pale on the cot. The fever had gotten worse, much worse. "Stay down, stay quiet, don't move from this room." He went back to the fight. It was over faster than he expected, not because they won, but because Blackwood suddenly pulled his men back. Warren watched them retreat, confused, then saw the reason: riders coming from the south. A lot of them, 20, maybe more. Glint of sunlight on badges, organized movement of trained men. Marshal Clayton had arrived. Blackwood saw them too. His face went rigid, calculating, adapting. He wheeled his horse around, shouted for his men to fall back. "This isn't over, Hackett," his voice carried across the valley. "I have rights, I have papers. The law is on my side." "Then come back with the law," Warren shouted after him. "But don't bring guns to a fight you started." Blackwood didn't respond, just disappeared into the trees with his surviving men, leaving their dead behind in the snow. Owen appeared at Warren's side, blood on his sleeve from a graze, but otherwise intact. "You okay?" "I'll live. The children." "Scared. One of the boys hurt. The one with the fever. Need to get him to a doctor." Marshal Clayton brought one. Figured we'd need medical attention one way or another. The next hour was a blur. Dr. Finch examined each child while Marshal Clayton took stock of the situation. 4 of Blackwood's men dead, 2 more wounded and captured. No casualties on their side, though Owen would carry a scar on his arm for the rest of his life. But it was Tommy who worried everyone most. Dr. Finch stepped away from the cot, his face grave. "Pneumonia, probably been building for weeks. The exposure and stress made it worse." "Can you help him?" "I can try, but he needs to be in town, in a proper bed with proper medicine, and even then..." The doctor shook his head. "He's very weak. It could go either way." Warren looked at Tommy's small face, pale as the snow outside, felt something crack inside. This boy had survived the mines, survived the escape, survived 3 days in the wilderness. He couldn't die now, not when they were finally safe. "Do whatever you have to do, whatever it does, just save him." Marshal Clayton was a tall man with gray at his temples and the kind of presence that made people stand straighter when he walked into a room. He listened to the whole story, from the children's escape to Blackwood's attack. Didn't interrupt once. Just listened with the focused attention of a man who knew the value of details. When Warren finished, Clayton was quiet for a long moment. "My brother spoke highly of you, said you were the bravest man in the regiment, said you saved his life at Antietam." "He saved mine first." Clayton almost smiled. "That's what he said you'd say." He looked at the children, then back to Warren. "What you've done here, taking in these children, standing up to a man like Blackwood, that takes a different kind of courage than warfare, the kind that doesn't get medals. Don't want medals, just want those children safe. They will be. I'm taking personal responsibility for this case. Blackwood's papers might hold up in some corrupt mountain court, but they won't hold up in mine. He'll fight it. Let him." Clayton's expression hardened. "I've been waiting years for an excuse to go after that operation. Now I've got 6 witnesses, 4 dead bodies, and a pattern of behavior no judge can ignore." He paused, met Warren's eyes. "His empire is going to fall, Mr. Hackett. It might take time, but it's going to fall." That night, with guards posted and the children finally asleep, Warren sat on the porch and watched the stars. Lily found him there, wrapped in one of Ellie's old quilts, feet still bandaged but healing. "You should be in bed." Couldn't sleep. She sat down beside him, pulled the quilt tighter. "I keep thinking about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "When this is over, when Blackwood's gone, what happens to us?" Warren was quiet. It was a question he'd been avoiding, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he was afraid of it. "What do you want to happen?" Lily was silent for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was small, uncertain, completely unlike the fierce warrior who'd held a knife on him 3 days ago. "I want to stay here, with you." She looked up at him. In the starlight, she looked even more like Charlotte. I know that's probably stupid. You didn't ask for 6 kids to show up on your doorstep. You've got your own life, your own grief. But this is the first place I felt safe since Mama died. The first place that felt like it could be home. Warren's throat tightened. You don't have to say yes. I know we're a lot. I know Tommy's sick and Henry has nightmares and Jamie won't talk and Maggie barely eats. I know we're broken in ways that might never heal, but Lily, I buried my family 4 years ago. Warren's voice came out rough, raw. My wife, my son, my daughter. And I spent every day since wishing I could join them, not having the courage to do it, but not having any reason to live either. Just existing, taking up space, waiting for it to be over. Lily's expression shifted, fear creeping in. She thought he was saying no. Then I heard you scream, found 6 children who needed someone to fight for them. And for the first time in 4 years, I remembered what it felt like to have a purpose, to have something worth protecting. He reached over, took her small hand in his rough one. You want to stay here, all 6 of you. Then you stay. This is your home now, for as long as you want it. The tears came then, streaming down her face. She threw herself into his arms, sobbing against his chest. Warren held her while the stars wheeled overhead, and the world for just a moment felt like it might actually be okay. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, thank you. No, he pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Thank you for reminding me what it means to be alive. They sat there for a long time, watching the night, listening to the silence. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, lonely and wild. But Warren didn't feel lonely anymore. For the first time in 4 years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The frame shifted again, Warren back in the present, the Winchester on his lap, Marcus leaning forward, completely absorbed. So you went to trial, all of you. We did, and that's where everything changed, where those 6 children stood up to their nightmare and won. Did they convict him? Warren's smile was dark. Let me tell you about the trial that shook Wyoming territory. The day 6 children testified against the monster who thought he owned them. The day Silas Blackwood learned that some things can't be bought. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the same valley where 10 riders had come 44 years ago. The courtroom in Buffalo was packed, every seat taken, people standing in the aisles. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when children went up against a man with that much power. And those 6 kids were braver than any soldier I fought beside in the war. They stood up there and told the truth, every ugly piece of it, no hesitation, no fear, just the truth. Warren turned back. That's what you need to understand, Marcus, before you deploy. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing what's right anyway. Those children taught me that. Marcus nodded slowly. What happened to Blackwood? Patience, son. Warren settled back into his chair. The best part's coming. The night before the trial, Warren found Lily on the porch. She sat wrapped in Ellie's old quilt feet, still bandaged but healing, staring at stars like they held answers to questions she was afraid to ask. Warren settled beside her, didn't speak, just sat. Sometimes silence said more than words ever could. I keep thinking about tomorrow, her voice barely above a whisper, about standing up there, telling everyone what happened. You don't have to if you're not ready. I know. She pulled the quilt tighter. But if I don't, he wins, and I can't let him win. Not after Mama died trying to keep me safe. Warren looked at her, 7 years old and already carrying weight that would break most grown men. Your mama would be proud of you. You think so? I know so. They sat in comfortable silence. Then Lily spoke again. When this is over, when Blackwood's in jail or wherever they put men like him, what happens to us? The question Warren had been dreading. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because saying it out loud made it real, made it something he could lose. What do you want to happen? Lily was quiet for so long. Warren thought she might not answer. Then she turned to look at him. I want to stay here, with you. I know that's probably stupid. You didn't ask for 6 kids to show up on your doorstep. You've got your own life, your own grief. But this is the first place I felt safe since Mama died. the first place that felt like home. Her voice went even smaller. I know we're a lot. Tommy's sick, and Henry has nightmares, and Jamie won't talk, and Maggie barely eats. We're broken in ways that might never heal, but Lily, Warren stopped her. I buried my family 4 years ago. My wife, my son, my daughter. Spent every day since wishing I could join them. Not having the courage, but not having any reason to live either. Just existing, taking up space, waiting for it to be over. He took her hand, small and cold in his. Then I heard you scream. Found 6 children who needed someone to fight for them. And for the first time in 4 years, we remembered what it felt like to have a purpose. You want to stay here, all 6 of you? Then you stay. This is your home, for as long as you want it. Lily threw her arms around his neck, sobbing, not sad tears, relief tears, the kind that came when something you desperately wanted but were afraid to hope for turned out to be real. Thank you. Over and over. Thank you. Warren held her while stars wheeled overhead, while the world settled into something that felt almost like peace. The courthouse in Buffalo was packed, every seat taken, people standing in the aisles, pressed against windows. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when children went up against a man with Blackwood's power. Warren led them through the crowd, 6 children and 1 rancher who decided their lives mattered more than his own safety. Marshal Clayton had provided escorts, deputies at every entrance, no chances. At the front table sat Silas Blackwood, expensive suit, gold watch chain gleaming, calm confidence of a man who'd never lost and didn't expect to start now. 4 lawyers around him, documents stacked high. His eyes found Warren's across the crowded room. He smiled, that same cold smile from the ranch, the one that said, I always get what I want. Then his gaze shifted to the children. The smile widened. Lily's hand tightened on Warren's arm. That's him. That's the man who killed Mama. I know, sweetheart, but he can't hurt you here. Not in front of all these people. He hurt her in front of people. Warren had no answer for that, because she was right. A door opened. Judge Morrison entered. Older man, silver hair, face that gave nothing away. From Denver. No connections to Blackwood. Marshal Clayton had made sure of that. The judge took his seat, surveyed the crowded room, banged his gavel. This court is now in session. Blackwood's lawyer stood first, smooth, polished. The kind of confidence that came from never losing. Your Honor, this is a simple matter of contract law. My client entered into legal agreements with the parents or guardians of these 6 children. The contracts are properly executed, properly witnessed, properly filed with the territorial office. He held up papers. They clearly establish my client's rights to the labor of these minors until terms of service are complete. The children fled unlawfully. Mr. Hackett has refused to return them despite repeated requests. This is quite simply theft. We ask the court to order their immediate return. Judge Morrison turned to Marshal Clayton. The defense, Clayton stood. Your Honor, we contend these contracts are fraudulent, obtained through coercion. In some cases signed by individuals with no legal authority to bind these children. Furthermore, we have evidence that Mr. Blackwood's operation has engaged in systematic abuse exploitation and in at least 1 case murder. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Blackwood's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Those are serious allegations, the judge said. Do you have evidence? We do, Your Honor. Documents from Mr. Blackwood's own records showing a pattern of criminal activity spanning years. And we have witnesses, the children themselves. Blackwood's lawyer shot to his feet. Your Honor, the testimony of children, especially traumatized children who have been influenced by Mr. Hackett, cannot be considered reliable. That's for the court to determine. The judge's voice was sharp. Marshal, you may call your first witness. Clayton turned to the benches where the children sat. We call Lily Brennan. Lily stood slowly, her face pale, hands trembling, but her eyes were fierce. She walked to the witness stand, climbed into the chair, faced the room. Warren wanted to go to her, stand beside her, but he couldn't. This was her fight now. All he could do was watch and pray. Clayton approached gently. Lily, can you tell the court your full name and age? Lily Mae Brennan, I'm 7 years old. And can you tell us how you came to be at Mr. Blackwood's camp? Lily took a shaky breath. My mama and me, we went there for work. She was a cook. After my papa died in the mines, we didn't have nowhere else to go. What happened when you arrived? At first it seemed okay. Mama worked in the kitchen and I helped her. But then Mr. Blackwood started. She stopped, voice catching. Take your time. He started looking at me, talking about me to his men, saying things like how pretty I was, how I'd bring a good price. Her small hands gripped the arms of the chair. Mama heard him. She got scared, tried to leave. What happened when she tried to leave? Mr. Blackwood said we owed him money for food and shelter. Said the only way to pay it off was for Mama to sign a contract. Give me to him. And did your mother sign? No, sir. Lily's voice cracked. She said she'd die first. The courtroom had gone completely silent, every eye fixed on this small, fierce girl with her dead mother's courage. What happened then, Lily? He beat her, made me watch, said it was a lesson about what happens when people say no to him. Tears streamed down her face now, but she didn't stop. Mama grabbed a knife, tried to fight back, and she choked on a sob. He shot her, right there in front of everyone. Objection. Blackwood's lawyer was on his feet. This is hearsay. The child is traumatized and unreliable. Overruled. Ice in the judge's voice. Continue, Marshal. Lily, what happened after your mother was killed? She told me to run. Last thing she ever said. So I ran. Found the other kids along the way. We stuck together. Kept each other alive until Mr. Warren found us. Clayton nodded slowly. Thank you, Lily. No further questions. Blackwood's lawyer approached like a snake circling prey. Miss Brennan, you say your mother was killed by my client. Did you actually see him pull the trigger? Lily's chin lifted. I saw him holding the gun. I saw the smoke. I saw Mama fall. But you didn't see the actual shot being fired. I saw enough. You saw what you thought you saw. A traumatized child in a chaotic situation. Is it possible you're mistaken about who fired? No, sir, it ain't possible. How can you be so certain? Lily's eyes locked onto Blackwood because he smiled right after. He looked at me and he smiled like killing Mama was funny to him. Another murmur through the courtroom. Someone in the back started crying. The lawyer pressed on, but Lily didn't waver, answered every question with the same fierce certainty, refusing to be confused or intimidated or broken. When she finally stepped down, Warren caught her in his arms. You did so good, sweetheart. So good. I told them, she whispered against his chest. I told them what he did. Yes, you did, and they heard you, every single person in this room. Henry was next. He walked to the stand with jaw clenched and shoulders squared, looking more like a soldier than a 9-year-old boy. Clayton led him through the basics, how he came to the camp, what the work was like, how the children were treated. Can you describe the conditions in the mines, Henry? Dark, hot, hard to breathe because of the dust. We worked 12 hours a day, sometimes more. If we slowed down, they beat us. If we got sick, they left us in the tunnels until we either got better or he stopped. Or what, Henry, or we didn't. Did you ever see children die in those mines? Yes, sir, 3 that I know of. Cave-ins, mostly. Or the cough that comes from the dust. Once you got that cough, you didn't last long. Blackwood's lawyer objected repeatedly, claiming bias, unreliability, trauma-induced confusion. The judge overruled each time, his expression growing darker by the minute. Then came the question Warren had been dreading. Henry, can you tell the court about the man named Burke? The boy's hands gripped the chair arms so hard his knuckles went white. Burke was one of Mr. Blackwood's men. He watched Maggie, one of the younger girls, watched her in a way that wasn't right, like a wolf watches a lamb, like he was waiting for his chance. His voice shook, but he pushed on. One night I heard Maggie scream, found him dragging her toward the back buildings, the ones where they took the girls who. He swallowed hard. I knew what he was going to do. Everyone knew what happened in those buildings. What did you do? I grabbed a rock, hit him, kept hitting him until he stopped moving. The courtroom erupted. Shouts, gasps. Blackwood's lawyer demanding the boy be arrested for murder. The judge banged his gavel until silence returned. "You killed a man," the judge asked quietly. "Yes, sir. To save Maggie. He was going to hurt her real bad, and there wasn't nobody else to stop him." "How old were you when this happened?" "9, sir, same as now." Judge Morrison stared at Henry for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like respect. "Thank you for your honesty, son. You may step down." One by one, the other children testified. Tommy, still weak, telling about the teeth and the cough and the boys who disappeared. Grace, somehow still able to smile, describing her mother's death and the nice lady who'd sold her to Blackwood. Even Maggie, quiet Maggie, who never spoke, whispered her story to the silent courtroom, confirming everything Henry had said, adding details that made grown men turn away with tears in their eyes. Only Jamie didn't testify. Too young, too traumatized, too lost in whatever world he'd retreated to when his mother died. But he didn't need to. By the time the children finished, half the courtroom was in tears. Then came Owen Webb. Blackwood's face changed when his nephew took the stand. For the first time, real fear flickered in those cold eyes. "Mr. Webb, can you state your relationship to the defendant?" "He's my uncle, my mother's brother." "And your occupation?" "I was a deputy in Buffalo, but before that I worked at my uncle's camp, helped run the operation." "Can you tell the court what that operation involved?" Owen took a deep breath. "Children, mostly. My uncle would find families in debt, offer to take their kids as payment. Sometimes he'd buy them outright from orphanages or workhouses. Sometimes he'd just take them when no one was watching." "And what happened to these children?" "They worked the mines, the small tunnels where grown men couldn't fit. 12, 14 hours a day, no pay, barely enough food to keep them alive." "What happened when they couldn't work anymore?" Owen's voice dropped. "They disappeared. My uncle called it processing. Said they went to other operations, other camps, but I saw the graves up in the high meadow, where he thought no one would find them." "You're saying children died and were buried secretly?" "Yes, sir, dozens of them over the years, maybe more." The courtroom had gone deathly silent. "Why are you coming forward now, Mr. Webb?" "Because I can't live with it anymore." Owen's voice cracked. "Because I looked the other way for too long, and children died because of it. Because those kids sitting there." He pointed at Lily and Henry and the others. "They had the courage to run, the courage to fight back. And I figured if they could be brave, maybe I could too." He looked directly at his uncle. "I'm sorry it took me so long, but I'm done being a coward." The documents came next. Page after page of Blackwood's records entered into evidence. Forged signatures, payments to corrupt officials, lists of children with terminated written next to their names. By the time Clayton finished presenting the evidence, Blackwood's confident smile had vanished entirely. The judge called for a recess. Warren took the children outside. Let them breathe fresh air, drink water, try to process what they'd been through. Lily sat on the courthouse steps, staring at nothing. "You okay?" "I don't know. I feel empty. Like I said, everything I had inside me, and now there's nothing left." "That's normal. What you did in there, what all of you did, it took everything you had. It's okay to feel wrung out." "What happens now?" "Now we wait for the judge to decide." "What if he decides wrong?" Warren didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth was, he didn't know. The law was supposed to protect the innocent, punish the guilty. But he'd seen enough of the world to know it didn't always work that way. The recess lasted an hour. When they filed back into the courtroom, Warren noticed Blackwood's lawyers looked defeated. Blackwood himself sat rigid, composure cracking around the edges. Judge Morrison took his seat, surveyed the room, cleared his throat. "In the matter of Silas Blackwood versus Warren Hackett, I have reviewed the evidence and heard testimony from multiple witnesses." Pause. "The petition for return of contracted laborers is denied." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Blackwood shot to his feet. "This is outrageous. I have legal contracts." "Sit down, Mr. Blackwood." The judge's voice was thunder. "Your contracts were fraudulent. Your operation is criminal. And based on the testimony and evidence presented today, I am ordering your immediate arrest on charges of murder, kidnapping, and trafficking in children. Deputies moved forward. Blackwood's lawyers tried to object. Useless. Within moments, the man who had terrorized so many children was in chains. Being led out of the courtroom, he passed Warren on the way out, stopped, leaned close. "This isn't over," he hissed. "I have friends, powerful friends. You think a conviction will stop me? I'll be out in a year. And when I am, I'll find you. I'll find those children, and I'll make you all pay." Warren met his eyes without flinching. "You can try, but you'll have to go through me first. And I'm not as easy to kill as you might think." The deputies pulled Blackwood away. The courtroom erupted in cheers, in tears, in the chaotic release of tension too long contained. And in the middle of it all, 6 children clung to each other and to the man who had saved them, finally understanding they were free. Really, truly, completely free. The weeks after the trial passed like water finding its way downhill. Slow at first, then faster, then settling into a rhythm that felt almost natural. Warren filed the custody papers on a Tuesday morning, standing in the territorial office with his hat in his hands and his heart in his throat. The clerk looked at the forms, then at him. 6 children, Mr. Hackett, all at once. "Yes, ma'am. That's quite an undertaking for a man on his own." "I reckon it is." She studied him for a long moment, then smiled. "Those are lucky children. I can tell just by looking at you." "I'm the lucky one, ma'am. They saved my life as much as I saved theirs." The papers went through without a hitch. Marshal Clayton had made sure of that, pulled every string he had to smooth the process. By the end of the month, it was official. Lily, Henry, Maggie, Thomas, Grace, and James were legally Warren Hackett's children, his family. The words still felt strange, like a language he'd forgotten how to speak. But every day, it got a little easier. Lily was the first to call him Papa. It happened on a Thursday evening, unremarkable in every way. She was helping him with dinner, standing on a stool to reach the stove. She turned. "Papa, can you hand me the salt?" Then froze, face going red. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I know you're not really." Warren set down the pot he was holding, crouched to her level. "Lily, I am, if you want me to be. But your real children are gone and nothing's going to bring them back. That doesn't mean I can't love again. Doesn't mean my heart is closed forever." His voice caught. "You and your brothers and sisters, you opened it back up. And I'm grateful for that. Every single day." Her eyes filled with tears. "So it's okay if I call you Papa." "It's more than okay, it's..." His voice caught. "It's everything." She threw her arms around his neck. Warren held her while dinner burned on the stove, and neither of them cared. Henry took longer. The boy had been hurt too deeply, trusted too little, to let down his guard easily. He called Warren sir for weeks after the trial. Maintaining that formal distance like armor, Warren didn't push, just kept showing up, teaching Henry about the ranch, about horses, about all the things a father teaches a son, waiting for the walls to come down on their own time. It happened in the barn late one night. Warren found Henry crying in the hayloft. He climbed up, settled beside him, didn't speak, just sat in the darkness, letting the silence stretch until Henry couldn't hold it anymore. "I had a dream," the boy whispered, "about my mama, the real one, the one who sold me." "What kind of dream?" "She was reaching for me, crying, saying she was sorry, saying she didn't have choice." Henry's voice cracked. "And I wanted to forgive her. I wanted to so bad, but I couldn't. I just kept running away from her." Warren let out a slow breath. "That's a hard dream. I'm a bad person for not forgiving her, for being angry." Warren put a hand on Henry's shoulder. "No, son, you're not. Your mama made a choice. A terrible choice, and you have every right to be angry about it. Forgiveness isn't something you owe her. It's something you give yourself when you're ready, if you're ever ready." "What if I'm never ready?" "Then that's okay too. The anger doesn't make you bad. It makes you human." Henry was quiet for a moment, then so softly Warren almost didn't hear. "My mama never hugged me, not once that I remember." "Come here." Warren pulled the boy into his arms, held him while he sobbed, rocking gently like he'd done with Benjamin a lifetime ago. Henry clung to him with desperate strength, and somewhere in that moment the walls finally came down. "I want to call you Pa," Henry said through his tears. "Is that okay?" "That's more than okay, son. That's perfect." Maggie never called him anything out loud, but she started leaving things for him. Drawings mostly. Pictures of the ranch, the horses, the mountains, and always in every picture a tall figure surrounded by smaller ones. Their family. One morning Warren found a picture on his pillow. It showed him sitting by the fire with all 6 children around him. At the bottom, in careful wobbly letters, "My Papa." Warren kept that picture in his pocket for the rest of his life. Tommy recovered slowly. The cough never fully went away, but it got better with time and medicine and proper food. Dr. Finch came monthly, always leaving with the same prognosis. The boy would never be strong, but he would live. That was enough. Tommy took to ranch life like he'd been born to it. Couldn't do heavy work, but he had a gift with animals. Horses calmed under his touch. Chickens followed him around the yard. Even the ornery barn cat would curl in his lap and purr. "I want to be a veterinarian," he announced one day at breakfast. "When I grow up, want to help animals the way Dr. Finch helps people." "That's a fine goal. Going to take a lot of studying." "I don't mind studying. Henry's been teaching me to read. I'm getting pretty good." "Is that so? Show me." Tommy grabbed a book from the shelf, one of Ellie's old novels. Started reading aloud, his voice halting at first, uncertain. But he pushed through, word by word, sentence by sentence. A boy who'd been told he was only good for crawling through mine tunnels. Reading literature. Warren had to look away so the children wouldn't see him cry. Grace remained Grace. Sunshine despite everything. The child who sang to chickens and believed in angels and refused to let the darkness of her past dim the brightness of her soul. She called Warren Daddy from the start, as if it had never occurred to her to call him anything else. "Daddy, look at this flower." "Daddy, can I have another biscuit?" "Daddy, will you tell me a story before bed?" Every time the word hit him like a gift he didn't deserve. Every time he said yes. One night when he was tucking her in, she asked the hardest question. "Daddy, is Mama watching us from heaven?" Warren's heart clenched. Which Mama, sweetheart? "Both of them. My real Mama and your real wife. Are they friends now up there?" He thought about Ellie, about Grace's mother who died in a laudanum haze, about all the pain and love and loss that had brought them to this moment. "I think they are. I think they're looking down at us right now. Real proud of how we've put ourselves back together." Grace smiled. "I like that. I'm going to dream about them tonight." "You do that, sweetheart. You dream about all the people who love you." "That's a lot of people now." "Yes, it is." Jamie was the mystery, the youngest child, barely 3 years old, hadn't spoken a word since his mother died. He followed Lily everywhere, clutching his ragged blanket, watching the world with enormous brown eyes that seemed to hold too much knowledge. Warren didn't push, didn't demand. Just made sure Jamie always had food and a safe place to sleep and someone to hold him when the nightmares came. Then one spring morning, Jamie spoke. They were sitting on the porch watching the sunrise over the mountains. Jamie in Warren's lap, wrapped in that blanket. He suddenly looked up. "Papa?" Warren's heart stopped. "What did you say?" Jamie's small hand touched his face. "Papa." "Yes, little one, I'm your papa. Mama's gone. I know, son, I'm so sorry. But you're here. I'm here and I'm not going anywhere." Jamie considered this for a long moment, then nodded once like he'd decided something important, and snuggled closer. He still didn't talk much after that, but he talked, and every word was a victory. Word came in July that Silas Blackwood had died in prison. Marshal Clayton brought the news himself, riding up to the ranch on a hot afternoon, hat in his hands, complicated expression on his face. They found him in his cell yesterday morning. Heart gave out, they say, though there's some who think one of his fellow prisoners might have helped it along. Warren felt nothing, not joy, not relief, not even satisfaction. Just emptiness where the rage used to be. Do the children know? Not yet. Figured you should be the one to tell them. Warren gathered them that evening after dinner, in the main room that had become the heart of their home. "I have something to tell you about Mr. Blackwood." Lily's face went pale. Henry's jaw clenched. The younger children moved closer together, instinctively seeking comfort. He died in prison. He can't hurt anyone anymore. Silence. Then Grace asked, "Is he in heaven with our mamas?" "No, sweetheart. I don't reckon he is." "Good." Her voice was fierce. "He doesn't deserve to be where they are." "No, he doesn't." Lily stood slowly, walked to the window, stared out at the mountains. "I thought I'd feel different when he was finally gone. I thought I'd feel free. And you don't?" "I feel nothing, like it doesn't matter. Like he already took everything he could take, and dying doesn't give any of it back." Warren went to her, put his hands on her shoulders. "That's the truth of it, sweetheart. Revenge doesn't heal. Justice doesn't undo what was done. All we can do is keep living, keep moving forward, keep building something good out of the wreckage." She turned to look at him. "Is that enough?" "It has to be, because it's all we have." Henry spoke up. "I'm glad he's dead. I know that makes me bad, but I am." "It doesn't make you bad. It makes you honest." Warren looked at all of them. "You're allowed to feel however you feel. Anger, relief, nothing at all. There's no right way to process something like this." Maggie whispered, the most she'd said in weeks. "I feel relieved. I kept thinking he'd escape, come back for us. Now I know he can't. He can't ever again." The children drifted off to bed one by one, leaving Warren alone with his thoughts and the dying fire. 4 years ago, he'd wanted to die. Now, for the first time in longer than he could remember, he wanted to live. The first anniversary of finding the children came in December. Warren didn't make a big deal of it, didn't want to dredge up the trauma of that terrible day, but the children remembered anyway. "1 year," Lily said at breakfast. "1 year since you found us. Best day of my life, even if I didn't know it at the time." Lily took his hand. "Mine too. Thank you for stopping. For not just riding past." "I couldn't have ridden past if I'd wanted to. Something in your scream just grabbed hold of me. Wouldn't let go. Mama used to say God works in mysterious ways. Your mama was a wise woman." Lily's smile was sad but peaceful. "She was. I miss her every day. But I think she'd be happy knowing we found you, knowing we're safe." "I hope so. I know so." Well, that night, Warren did something he hadn't done in 4 years. He walked up the hill to the 3 graves behind the house. Ellie, Benjamin, Charlotte, his first family lost to fever in time. He stood in the cold, snow falling gently around him. "I brought some new folks home, 6 of them, kids who needed someone to fight for them." He cleared his throat. "I hope you don't mind. I hope you understand that loving them doesn't mean I love you any less. It just means my heart got bigger. Had to hold all this." The wind stirred the snow, soft and gentle as a caress. "Lily reminds me of Charlotte. Same fierce eyes, same stubborn chin. And the others, they're teaching me things I forgot I knew. How to laugh, how to hope, how to wake up in the morning and be glad of it." He touched Ellie's headstone. "I miss you, love. Miss you every day. But I'm not drowning anymore. I'm swimming. And I think that's what you'd want for me." A branch cracked behind him. Henry stood there, lantern in hand. The others were worried. "It's getting cold." "I'm coming." Henry stepped closer, looked at the graves. "Your first family." "Yes." "Do you tell them about us?" "I do." "What do you say?" Warren smiled. "That I'm the luckiest man in the world. That I got a second chance I didn't deserve. That they'd love you all as much as I do." Henry was quiet for a moment. "I think they'd be proud of you, Pa, for what you did, for who you are. I think they'd be proud of you too, all of you." They walked back to the house together, lantern casting warm glow against the snow. Through the windows, Warren could see the others, Lily reading by the fire, Grace and Maggie playing some game, Tommy and Jamie curled together on the couch, his family. Not perfect, not unbroken, scarred and wounded and still learning to trust, to love, to believe in tomorrow. But together, that's what mattered. That's what made it real. The frame shifted one last time. Warren back in the present, 75 years old, fire burning low. Marcus on the edge of his seat with tears in his eyes. So that's how it started. 6 kids in a blizzard. That's how it started. And they all stayed, all 6. Warren smiled. Every last one. Lily married a rancher from Montana, gave me 4 grandchildren. Henry became a lawyer, still fights for kids who can't fight for themselves. Maggie runs an orphanage in Denver. Tommy's a veterinarian just like he wanted. Grace married a preacher, has 5 children of her own. And my dad, Warren looked at Marcus, really looked. Jamie, the little boy who wouldn't speak, who was only 3 years old when I found him. Marcus's eyes widened. That's why you never talk about this. It's his story too. It's all our stories. Every person in this family exists because 6 children survived, because they were brave enough to run, to fight, to trust one more time. Warren stood, walked to the mantel, picked up the old photograph. Black and white, edges worn soft from decades of handling. A younger Warren surrounded by 6 small figures. Lily in front with that fierce expression. Henry standing protector. Maggie barely visible in shadows. Tommy propped on a chair. Grace grinning. Jamie clutching his blanket. He handed it to Marcus. Your father gave this to me on my 70th birthday. Said I should show it to you before you deployed. Said you'd need to understand where you came from. Marcus studied the photograph, seeing his grandfather young, seeing 6 children who would become the foundation of everything that followed. We're survivors. More than that, we're fighters. We don't give up. We don't leave people behind. And we always, always find our way home. Marcus stood, hugged Warren tight. I'll come back, Grandpa, I promise. I know you will. Family always finds a way home. Next morning dawn. Warren stood on the porch watching Marcus drive away toward deployment. Behind him, the house full of family. Jamie, Marcus's father, and his wife. 3 of Jamie's siblings who'd made the trip. Grandchildren. Great-grandchildren. Lily stood beside him. 73 years old now. Gray-haired, but eyes still fierce. You thinking about that day when you found us? Always thinking about it. Best day of my life. Lily took his hand. Mine too, Papa. Mine too. They stood together watching the sunrise. The same sun that had risen over Wyoming for 144 years. The same light that had shone on a blizzard and 6 children freezing to death, and one man who chose to stop. One man who chose to fight. One man who chose to love when he thought his heart was dead. And from that choice of family, not born of blood but forged in fire, built on the simple truth that sometimes the people who save you are the ones you save. Warren looked at the valley, his valley, the land he'd built with his own hands, where he'd buried one family and raised another, where he'd learned that endings could also be beginnings, that death could lead to life, that the greatest courage wasn't facing down guns or surviving war. It was opening your heart after it had been broken, choosing to love again when love had already destroyed you once. 6 children had taught him that. 6 children who'd become his purpose, his redemption, his second chance. And from those 6, a legacy, 23 grandchildren, 41 great-grandchildren, all still gathering every Christmas, all carrying forward the lesson Warren had learned in a blizzard 44 years ago. That family wasn't about blood. It was about choice, the choice to stand together when it mattered most, the choice to fight for each other, the choice to always, always come home. Warren took a deep breath, Wyoming air cold and clean in his lungs. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, lonely and wild. But Warren Hackett didn't feel lonely anymore. He was exactly where he was supposed to be, surrounded by the family he'd chosen, the family that had chosen him back. And that was enough. That was everything.